You can see who a person really is when no one is looking. When we are alone, we tend to do things that are not approved by others. We cheat on exams. We steal ideas and copy notes from others' works. We look at an exceeding amount of porn. These are just but a handful of things we shouldn't be proud of, though the good thing is, we can still change this. Even if it's only us who will ever truly know our true deeds in our alone time. And the fact that we are the only ones who will truly know our virtuousness is something we still have to strive to do. It's easy to fall on vices when no soul is a witness. It's so damn easy. But if we care about our integrity and our character, and if we care about other people around us, our family and friends and even people who we don't know, people will be disgusted by us if they knew who we are, and eventually, we would too if we remain the same. We should be better human beings. And that is not easy to do because we can always be better. And no, we can't be perfect, though we're able to be saint-like in public and in private life, but as I said, we should still strive towards a better direction in my opinion. We can't totally remove our sinful and lustful thoughts, but it's possible to reduce them more and more. Imagine being in public just being oneself without these thoughts and urges. That it's not a struggle to act normally in the company of others, not living a dual life in the shadows and in the light. And I'm not saying remove every desire you have, of course, you still need that to procreate among other things, but just imagine not holding back, and you aren't having to hold down your demons every time you are at a dinner party amongst friends. Be noble, even if no soul is a witness. I said this to myself facing a really tempting situation, almost giving in to my urges, and taking advantage of a situation no one can see. And that thinking a phrase made me act more acceptably and civilly, by any standards, even if no one knew about it, or will know about the thoughts that plagued me before doing the right thing. I was able to do what was right in a private moment, and not crossing that line, made it easy to be noble in more tempting times ahead. These are minor acts that are supposed to be kept private because we all know that when we cross a line, we know that it's really hard to get back to our normal selves after that. And not that I haven't done things in my private time since then that I was proud of course, I slipped here or there a couple of times. But the point is, we decide to which our moral compass goes back to, doing good, even in our private time. We can only ask for forgiveness for such a weak moment in our lives, learn from its pain and move on, and also forgive ourselves. And from that lesson, be guided by it when presented with another temptation in the future. When we do this, learn from our past actions, we then understand that our sins or mistakes from the past were meant to happen to us, just so we can learn that pain in that moment, so that we might be able to make the right decision the next time. You can see who a person really is when no one is looking. This saying is also linked to finding one's true self. When I was younger, I was always surrounded by friends. In elementary school, I played with a lot of kids in the neighborhood. In high school, I was the leader of our small group of artists. In college, it was the same thing, and I was also at one point the president of an art organization with lots of members. After college and getting a job at a call center agency, a few friends and colleagues were always with me. However, it is when I became a full-time artist, that's when I felt really alone. Not that I didn't have a lot of friends still, I did, but they all either had work in an office or didn't have the funds to come over to chew the fat and shoot the shit daily, and the latter was the same for me. I was broke. I did accept mural jobs and other art gigs, which was not often and can't be called a regular income by any means. In fact, you can call it irregular income, if not non-existent. But only those times that I had some income from an art gig was I able to invite friends over to the studio and hang out with them, smoking pot, drinking, and eating pizza. It's not that they wouldn't come over when I had next to nothing in my pocket. I do have friends like that too, and I thank God that they never judged me and still are my best friends today. But most of my friends at the time kept me company from the sheer epitome of being devoured and eaten away by the void of loneliness. I guess you could call it depression, not having an income as an artist, meaning you aren't selling any work, you doubt your skills, and you doubt your art, and I have to tell you, women don't come knocking on my doorstep either. When you aren't the shit, you're just shit. I did have skills, just not a steady income to go out on a date. Even one of my exes broke up with me because I didn't have a job at one point, and she was right to do so. But what I hadn't accounted for is that you can still be happy when you're alone. It's a choice to be lonely. Well, you can look at it that way, being lonely or just being independent. Separation anxiety is a term that might be appropriate here, and it's not that I'm afraid of people or chose to isolate myself like a hikikomori, which are Japanese men that chooses not to leave the house. But in my eyes both are not normal, therefore it can create a certain pain or depression which can lead to suicide. And that's what happened to me. It was my third girlfriend in a row that I'd broken up with, again without a job, and I'd actually used all my money up, and even borrowed some from my aunts and uncles, to live a life living in with my girlfriend at the time. But things didn't go the way they do in movies. Sure, we were living together in an apartment, but we didn't always have money to pay the rent being a full-time artist in a new land with that irregular to non-existent income. I wasn't able to pay my end of the deal. My girlfriend was still in college at the time, and she was at least getting some allowance given to her by her family, but we moved into this bigger place, so that I would have the space to paint. But then as the non-existent income crept in, I had to borrow money. When the people I used to borrow from ran out, I decided to just sell my intellectual property. See, I also make comics, and then I was able to find a guy that was interested in purchasing some characters I did when I was a kid, and still had the potential to be popular today. The deal was that he would give me 70,000 pesos, and I would give him the rights to use my characters and make them into comics. And we would print and sell those, and in the end, I would also pay him back the 70K. Looking back, the deal wasn't all that fair, but he was not to blame. Sure, he was eager to sign the check and hand it to me and my business partner Bone at the time. He was also the one who didn't walk out on me when I had next to nothing in my pocket, and I was all hot up to do this, just because my rent is due in a couple of days. I figured at least with this I can get 2 months worth of rent. Though the characters that I created since I was in 3rd grade would be owned by a guy I just met 2 years ago. Oh, and the contract we were doing stated that if I wasn't able to pay him back in 6 months, he would own all the characters. Again, not his fault, just the stupid Marius struggling to pay rent that month, that I wasn't thinking straight. And so the check was ready. Bone and I were just going to pick it up the next day, but luckily, as with any business dealings that I have, especially with this big a deal, I ran it over with my mom who had business experience, since she and my grandfather helped build up their business that still stands today. She said that it was not a good deal. More often than not, my mother is in agreement with me about art, writing, and dealings like this, but today, she outright said don't do it. She said that what I gained today wouldn't be that profitable in the long run, and that I could get more if I just waited for the right deal in the future for my characters. In the end, I was losing these childhood creations of mine, that I would not get back to just 70,000 pesos, which I can easily get when I do get a name as an artist. She asked me why was I doing this all of a sudden, and I told her that I need money to pay rent. To which she said, if that's the only reason, don't go ahead with this deal. Find money elsewhere. Thinking about what she said, I had to break the deal off and didn't push through with it. Later I spoke with my girlfriend, who was living in our apartment in Baguio, while I was in Manila, and our conversation ended with me breaking up with her. It was because she thought that I was seeing another woman here in Manila when in truth I was busy looking for money to pay rent for us. I lost it during the conversation. She didn't know what I was willing to sacrifice to keep our life and our apartment there. I was willing to sell my only real valuable possession, and she just nags me and accuses me of cheating on her. When she said that, I saw her and just told her that it was over. I wish I could say that I was happy. At least the rent problem was gone, and so all of my problems were solved somewhat. It made me think that I wasn't sure if we were meant to be with each other for the rest of our lives living like that, having our arguments get the best of us. And I was again back to being broke, alone and lonely, by myself and depressed, and thoughts of suicide came to mind. I remember this as the lowest point of my life. I was again going at it solo, all sad and miserable, without money, hungry, and felt like I was cursed. I thought that anything I did turned into shit. Nothing was working out for me, and I felt that I could never really get back up from this. I felt that I was a huge mistake, that my life was filled with numerous wrong decisions, and that was the story of my life. I felt that it was a mistake, that I shouldn't be alive, and upon realizing that, I decided I would just end my life. But then, right after saying that, I thought to myself, okay, since I'll be ending it all, maybe I should do something as a last hurrah of my talents. I am an artist after all, and so I said to myself, since this is the end, for my last act, I would do something that I always wanted to do, regardless of money, regardless of people's opinions, or if I had nothing to eat, or if people would be willing to buy it or not. So I decided I would make comics as my final send-off to myself, and so I did. I did also want to tell people why I was a fucked up kid ever since, and why I committed suicide. I should at least tell them my story and why I did it. And so that was the story I did. I called it 𝐘𝐿. It focused on how I became a fucked up kid, after witnessing a cat that I tried to take care of, but instead killed in the process. I told the story in comic book format, making the art on the pages all paintings. And then after a month or so, when finally I released all my pent-up darkness onto the comic pages, as if a weight was lifted. And soon after finishing the entire comic book, I didn't want to kill myself anymore. I felt inspired and liberated. For once I didn't think of what people would think of me or my art, or the story I wanted to tell. I was doing art for me. And that realization, that act triggered something inside me that I was able to discover who I really was, and why I set myself on this art path in the first place. I had forgotten that the true reason I took fine arts was to learn art to make better comics. I realized I got swept up by all the fame and attention I got from painting huge artworks and showing them off at galleries. I even created a character to look the part of a legendary artist. But in reality, I only had average painting skills, and was not professional enough to even improve myself or my materials, and was always late on deadline submissions. I created a fake identity just to be seen as a competent artist, and was surrounded by fake friends who only longed to be in the spotlight with me, along with toxic relationships which I attracted with my false persona. I snapped out of it and thought it was enough lies and bullshit. I was going to be honest with myself. Everything I say will never be superficial. I wouldn't use the word awesome that often anymore and describe what I really felt about things. That I should just show how it really is to myself and others. That I would never lie to myself, that I will always be honest with others and seek out and only tell the truth. And from that day, I dubbed myself as an agent of truth. And you know what? Discovering your true self can only come from being able to survive being truly alone, that you have to be in isolation to discover who you really are, peeling away your friends and your family's influences on you. It's you being alone, quieting the voices that aren't you, especially the ones that sound nothing like you, the loud voice stopping you from making a terrifying but ultimately rewarding decision to achieving greatness. Oftentimes, these thoughts are voices that don't sound like you, are dead wrong, they are not on your side. More often than not, they're just sabotaging you anyways when making a choice. To hear the voice that is truly yours, I would like to let you know that it's always been there, it has never been gone. It was just overpowered by peer pressure and other voices. Do you know how you can spot your true voice in your head? Recognize what the other voices sound like. Do they sound like your friend or parents or teachers or enemies? If they do, then they are not your true voice. Silence them and hear your own. You can only discover that when no one is around. Practice it and listen to it. In time you will not hear these noisy and nosy voices anymore. Ignore them and opt for silence. Sometimes, you also have to quiet your own voice because they are full of doubts and confusion. So you have to silence it 2 at times in order to just do and not think. That's what intuition, feeling, and being in the zone were like. For me, realizing my true voice, being alone, and being an agent of truth, these 2 things changed my life forever and for the better, and it is still getting better and better. As cheesy as it sounds, I really can't deny the wonders and miracles these 2 simple things have done for me. I was able to jumpstart my comic book career. That was the way I was able to fulfill who I was meant to be. I got more and more art jobs and was a professional at it, delivering stellar work, and eventually in one of these art jobs, I was able to meet my future wife. It was when I was able to seek out the truth that I was able to find what was meant for me. If we can be no believing in the shadows, we might be able to cleanse our dark desires, and instead learn our true art. It's cleaning your house daily, and not just doing so because you're expecting guests so they think your house is tidy. It's about cleaning regardless if you're expecting visitors. You clean because you want a functional and pleasant environment to work and live in. And if the visitors do come, invited or unexpected, you'll just be you, with your friends and family enjoying the company and the view.